5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
Hello pals, it's Sylvie, hope you're doing good. Welcome back to another vlog. I have just finished editing and uploading the last vlog that I put out, so go watch that if you haven't already. And I thought that while I was in the vlogging frame of mind, I would kick off this one. If you watched last week's vlog, you know that I am currently reading The Cruel Prince by Holly Black. I had hoped to read a chunk this evening, but then I spent this evening, like I say, editing the last vlog, so I'm still about 100 pages in. But yeah, I'm thoroughly enjoying my reread, and to be honest with you, it's kind of better than I remember, at least on like a writing level. I feel like time will tell as to whether I think the plot holds up, but I feel like this book, because it has been wildly popular, this whole series has been really popular, it's had a lot of praise and a lot of hype. And then, as with any very popular book, it also has had a lot of backlash, especially because it is a young adult sort of fae fantasy book. Those get a lot of like unpopular opinion, but I hated it kind of shtick. But so far it's really holding up. I'm really enjoying it. Like I say, I think the writing is really good. I think the main character, Jude, she's probably like fairly typical for sort of the various character archetypes you get in the YA fae fantasy genre, but I think she's well done and I'm really enjoying it. I'm having a good time, and that is the main thing. Like I said in the last video, I've been really hankering for some like fae content recently, so that's doing quite nicely. I had an excellent day. I met up with one of my best friends. We sort of wandered around town, got some food, got the best lunch I've ever had in my entire life. And we went to this, I'm looking for the word, it's like a big old warehouse, and it's full of a bunch of different vendors with like vintage stuff, collectibles, handmade things. And I am always on the hunt for like square silk or satiny scarves, because that's what I use. I like wrap my tarot decks in scarves because inevitably the boxes they come in always annoy me. And I found this. This scarf is possibly the highlight of my scarf finding career. Does it match any of my tarot decks? Not particularly, but it was incredible, so I had to buy it. And then she also gave me my Christmas present, which is a book, so I will share that with you as well. And it's this. This is Full of Life, Exploring Earth's Biodiversity. Words by Isabel Thomas, pictures by Sarah Gillingham. And it's really, really cool. I've had a quick flick through. Ooh, I'm also now seeing that the hardcover underneath the jacket looks really cool. And it is! Like, it's a rainbow, and then also, like, look at that! She said she was looking for books for me because she knows me very well. And when she came across this, it has loads of, like, infographics and graphs of, as the title would suggest, all the different kinds of life on Earth. Which is right up my street. I think if you have been hanging about this channel for a while, you know I like science, you know I like natural history, and you should know that I love a good graph. Let me tell you, finding a new and exciting kind of graph, new to me, was the personal highlight of my dissertation process, was finding a cool, genuinely, 100% serious, finding this cool graph that I had never seen before and my supervisor had also never come across before, was a highlight for me. I've done nothing else exciting, so I will leave you with that, and I will catch you tomorrow when hopefully I will have read a good chunk of The Cruel Prince. Once again, I've misplaced my actual physical copy of the book, but it is available on Kindle Unlimited, so I'm currently reading it on my Kindle. And I'll see you again soon. Hey pals, it is Saturday. For once in my life, I'm drinking my coffee while it's still hot. However, I'm about to talk at you, so by the time I get to it, it will probably have gone cold. That is neither the update you wanted nor needed, but I have done some reading. I am now on page 225 of The Cruel Prince, and I'm having such a fun time. Like I said yesterday, the writing is better than I remember it being. That's not supposed to be an insult. It's not like I remembered it to be bad. I just wasn't really paying much attention to the writing, to be quite honest with you. When I first read this, I read it in one sitting, in like one afternoon, read it straight through, was just kind of absorbed by the story and not really like critically thinking about it at all. I was just along for the ride. And I'm still enjoying it this time around, as I keep saying. I don't think I have anything to actually say about this book because it's so incredibly popular that everybody else's opinions and interpretations are already out there, and I am kind of reading this for a bit of fun, not really to like, I mean it's a reread, so I'm not really expanding my reading anyway, but regardless, I think obviously a lot of the kind of hype around this book is the enemies to lovers relationship between Jude and Cardan. Spoilers if you somehow have not been exposed to this story already. But like that's like I'd say I'm over halfway through. It's about a 400-page book. Is it about a 400-page book? Oh, it's 370 pages, and I'm so what, like 2/3, a bit less than. We're not doing maths again. I'm a good chunk of the way through. I'm over halfway through anyway, and that's really, it's been hinted at, but extremely barely. And honestly, like I think I'm just reading into it because I know what happens. It is more about Jude and her finding her place in this fairy court where everybody kind of looks down on her or actively wants to kill her. And her like figuring out a way to not exactly use that to her advantage, but sort of lean into it. There was a line somewhere that I highlighted on my Kindle, which was along the lines of, I don't know, if they're gonna hate me anyway, give them something to hate me about, sort of that sort of thought process, I guess. But it's fun. I'm liking it. I've talked a lot about this, so I'm gonna put that down. Because that's all I'm reading, I have no more reading update for you. So this has been very short and sweet. I've done nothing today. I walked the dog, I read my book, I tidied my bedroom. Highly productive. Hello everybody, it is Tuesday the 27th of December. If you celebrate Christmas, I hope you had a nice Christmas. If you don't, hope you had a nice few days. I have a reading update for you, so I need to do bookmark out because I finished The Cruel Prince. I had so much fun rereading this and revisiting this, and actually I think my like opinion of this has been coloured by just the general like YA tropey fantasy backlash that has been received by tropey YA fantasy books. Side note, I feel like YA should be pretty tropey. I feel like that's kind of part of the point of young adult books, is that they're pretty, like whatever the opposite of subtext is, like they should be pretty tropey. Like they don't have to be, but I feel like it's kind of a moot point to criticize young adult books for being like not the most complex in the world, but that's a whole other discussion that I feel like I'm probably not fully qualified to have. Anyway, I really enjoyed this. It was better than I remembered. I don't remember it being bad specifically, but like I say, I think my opinion has just been like coloured. It's been about 4 years since I read this, so I remembered like the big plot points, but I didn't remember the specifics. I don't really have anything much more to say about this because, to be honest, I was reading it just to have a good time and not to like have a lot of thoughts. But yeah, it's better than I remember. The kind of how everything concludes in this book and where everybody is positioned at the end of this book is very satisfyingly brought together. It was like, it's kind of a lot about like being tricksy and stealthy, especially like you've got a fae book, you've got a mortal in the fae realm, so that whole like trickery theme is big in this book. That's kind of one of the main themes of the series and one of the main themes of like fae stories in general, I'd say. And it's done, I found it very satisfying in this book. There was enough not told to you as the reader that you were like surprised by plot twists, but they made sense. They weren't completely out of nowhere, so I was very pleased with this. I'm now on to The Wicked King. I've only read about 20 pages thus far. This is going to be interesting because I remember being really pissed off at this book when I read it. Like I think when I first read them, I gave the first book 5 stars I gave the third book, I think, like 4 or 5 stars. I was really satisfied with the third book, but this annoyed me, and I think specifically the ending of this book really annoyed me. So I'll be interested to see what I think of it now, going into it again, knowing what happens at the end and knowing how that gets resolved in the third book. I'm interested to see what I think, because actually I don't remember anything. That's not strictly true. No, it might be strictly true. I don't think I remember anything about the plot points of this or the third book. Except like how everything ended, which is interesting because I read these, obviously, like the first one is the one I read the longest ago because it's the first book, and I read this all in one sitting, which usually means I don't remember what's gone on because I'm reading it too fast to actually like let it marinate in my brain, whereas this I read, you know, over a slightly longer period of time, and the third one as well, and I don't remember a single thing except like the really major events. So I'm excited to get into it. Like I say, I read about 20 pages. And I expect, this is a short book as well, this one's only about like 300 pages. That's it. 326 pages, so I expect I'll get through this really quickly, as well as the third book. In terms of my reading goal, I have to get through them pretty quickly, but like I'm not forcing myself through these books. They're fun, easy reads. Like I'm not forcing myself to hit an arbitrary goal. So yeah, we'll see how I go on with this. Do you know McDonald's coffee is surprisingly good for how cheap it is? That's kind of all I have for you right now. I did go to the Waterstones today in my town because they've got a half price hardback sale on at the moment, in store only. But mine was a bit shit. It wasn't shit, it just wasn't what I wanted. It's a lot of like contemporary and literary books, and then like non-fiction. They're really sad sci-fi fantasy section at my local Waterstones, which makes me sad, but is probably good for both my bank balance and my TBR, because my TBR is getting out of hand. But I did get a couple of books for Christmas, so let's do a little mini book haul. First up, my brother got me The Traitor by Seth Dickinson. This, I think, in the US is published as The Traitor Baru Cormorant? Cormorant? That doesn't sound right. The Traitor Baru Cormorant? That can't be it. The Traitor Baru something. In the UK it's just The Traitor. My brother picks books for me exclusively based on the cover and not what is in the book, so I've got to say, like, this is not his best work. I definitely had some really pretty covers in my wish list. This is fine, but it's not beautiful. There were better books on there. Not that I'm complaining, because I'm really excited for this book. This book, it's been out for a while. When were you published? Got a map. This was first published in 2015, which is nearly like 7 or 8 years now. Nearly 7 or 8 years ago. And this is morally grey, morally bankrupt. I want to say queer main character. I don't know if I have like made that up in my brain or if the main character of this book is a queer woman. Who knows? Not me, until I read this book to find out. But I actually don't know much about this. I've heard really good things. Like I said, it's been out since 2015, so I've heard really good things for the last 7 or so years and just like never got around to reading it myself. I think it's part of a trilogy. There's definitely more than one book, and I'm assuming that by now that series has wrapped up and been completed. From what I can gather, this has like insurrection, it has rebellion, Baru is vowing revenge on the Empire, we're going to bring the Empire to its knees, all that good stuff. So pretty standard like fantasy ideas, and I'm excited to see how it goes in this book. I'm so excited about this. I'm so excited about all the books that people buy me off my wish list, because I am constantly like curating my wish list because my mood changes frequently. So I'm also, it like reminds me what I want to read. I'm like constantly updating my wish list and adding books and taking books off. So I'm always extremely excited when I receive a book off a wish list. And my sister bought me House of Hunger by Alexis Henderson. I recently spoke about The Year of the Witching, which is the other book I've read from Alexis Henderson. I think this is only the second book she's published, but if I'm wrong, then that's exciting because there's more to read. But yes, I recently spoke about The Year of the Witching in my like horror recommendations video, and this is nothing to do with that, but I am excited to read more from her. That was a very long-winded way of saying that I'm looking forward to this book, which I had already said. So I'm not sure exactly what is going to happen in this book, but our main character goes to a creepy gothic house mansion to be a blood maid. I'm not sure what a blood maid is, but I'm looking forward to finding out. There is a blurb on the front of this describing it as a sapphic fever dream of a novel, which is probably all I needed to ever put this on my wish list, even if I hadn't already read a book by Alexis Henderson, so I am very excited. And then the third book I received for Christmas is Engines of Empire by R.S. Ford. This is the biggest, like in size, paperback I have ever witnessed in all my days. This is a standard paperback. This is huge. Like, this is the size of a hardback, more or less. Like, what absolute nonsense. That's beside the point. This, I also don't remember too much about, but this is a fantasy. I think this is first in a series. And I remember being really excited about this because it's like industrial and it's mixing like machines and magic, which is not something I've actually read much, if anything, of, but sounds really cool and really interesting, and I'm excited to see how they combine, like how those two elements combine. You may know if you've watched my videos before, I really like when there is a very fleshed out in-world, either like made up science in a sci-fi, or when the fantasy elements of a book are really like science-ified, which isn't a word, but it is now. And so I feel like this kind of follows on from that. We've got like the magic combined with like something that requires a lot of structure and a lot of like engineering. So this is industrial fantasy. I think there's also a revolution in here. This is really heavy. I'm going to physically struggle to read this book because it's massive. But anyway, I am very excited, very much looking forward to this. A very good little stack of Christmas books for me. I am going to leave it there now. I will talk to you again when I've read some more of The Wicked King and see how I get on with that. Hey pals, it's Friday the 30th of December and I have to give you the quickest vlog update before my memory card on my camera is full. So, my coffee's cold as per usual, but let's get into it. So I have finished my reread of The Wicked King. I don't remember what I said in the last vlog updates, but when I initially read this, the very ending of this really pissed me off. If you've read it, you know what I mean. It's a bit of like a shocker twist of an ending. And I can't remember why it really pissed me off at the end of the second book, the first time I read it. Maybe because it's kind of like, it's a bit of a, almost a bit of like a reversal of what happens at the end of the first book. And for whatever reason, that really annoyed me. I've got to say though, on a second read, even though I knew what was happening, I was still like taken by surprise in a way. So I feel like that's a good thing. That says good things about the writing of this book, right? If it still managed to like take me by surprise. I will also say I don't remember a lot of the plot of what happens in this book. I remember one of the like significant events, but not much beyond that, and I had a thoroughly good time rereading it. Yeah, so I think if the first book in this series, The Cruel Prince, is all about Jude outwitting and out-tricking the Fae, then this book is kind of about how she herself is outmaneuvered, which I found interesting. It definitely didn't feel like a repeat of the first book in that sense. Like, although she has now got this power, she's trying to maintain this power, it didn't just feel like her being clever again, because 3 books of that would be a bit tedious. This book was definitely how she was being like outwitted herself in various ways. Also on that note, because her twin sister comes into the outwitting of her, I don't think that made grammatical sense, but you know what I mean. Both of her sisters are not, I don't think they're very well characterised, in at least in these first 2 books. I don't remember how it is in the 3rd book. I'll tell you once I've read it. But I don't have a lot of sympathy for either of them, and I don't think you're necessarily meant to, but Jude does love both of them, and I just find that kind of hard to believe in a way. Not hard to believe, but just like, it feels a bit jarring when she has moments where she wants to like make nice with her sisters, because Taryn, her twin sister, is kind of awful consistently throughout both the books that I've reread of this trilogy. and her other sister Vivi, who is half Fae herself, is kind of ambivalent at best a lot of the time to what Jude is going through. And so when she has moments of like sisterly bonding, it's just a little bit, it feels a little bit off compared to how they're characterized in the rest of the books. Also on family dynamics, I really like how she is with her father, stepfather, adoptive father, guardian, Maddox. In general, the kind of fucked up family dynamics on that side of things is quite fun, and it's kind of more what I expect because it is like a human fae relationship, even though it's a human fae family relationship. It kind of is what I expect, and I think maybe that's why her relationships with her sisters throw me, because I think I'm never sure whether they're meant to be more like a family first normal sisterly relationship, or whether it's like the fae trickery dynamics that are supposed to be like primary. Maybe that's the issue, maybe that is also Jude's issue with her sisters, but either way it's like I'm not sure how I'm supposed to read it, basically. So yeah, on the whole I really enjoyed this reread. I will also say that I feel like I'm going around in circles with my thoughts, but like I've said, this book is about how Jude is being like outmaneuvered, or how maybe she's not quite up to outmaneuvering the entire Fae court. But some of the kind of twists are thrown in to mess with her plans or mess her around felt also a little bit out of nowhere, and I guess that makes sense because obviously in the first book everything's from Jude's perspective, right? And in the first book we see her laying plans so that when her twists and surprises come, it's still surprising to like you as the reader, because she's not exactly described what she's going to do, but you kind of can see how things have been like foreshadowed and how plans have been laid. Whereas with this, because it's other people kind of springing traps on her, there's no, it kind of comes out of nowhere and it just feels less clever. So I don't know if that is just because we're seeing things from Jude's perspective and that's how we're supposed to feel, or if it's just like not quite so cleverly written. I'm not sure. But yeah, I also wish, I apparently have a lot of thoughts about this book that I didn't know I had. I also wish we saw more of Cardan's development in this. So I'm talking about these books assuming that you know, that everybody knows what they're about. But Cardan is the cruel prince and the wicked king in this book. And he like definitely changes quite a lot, at least in how he is perceived by Jude. He changes quite a lot between like the beginning of The Cruel Prince to the end of this book. He's like developed a lot, and I wish we could see more of that. And I don't know how we could possibly see that, like within the way the story is told. So that's not really a criticism of the book. I just want more, basically, is what I'm saying. I'm going to leave that there because I am rapidly running out of time. I have The Queen of Nothing ready to go. I have today and tomorrow to read this. Wish me luck. Right. Hey, hi, hello, happy new year. Cheers with my cold McDonald's coffee. I don't know why I decided to press on the camera as soon as I sat down when I was not ready, but hey, am I definitely wonky? Whatever. It's New Year's Day. 2022 is done. She's over. Thank God for that. I do have a reading update for you. I'm going to finish this vlog, but first I'm going to tell you that I did successfully finish Queen of Nothing yesterday on the last day of 2022. I read 60 books this year. The last 3 were the Folk of the Heir trilogy, and I could not have picked a better bunch of books to finish my year off with. This was so much fun. This has totally revived my like love of reading the whole trilogy in like about 10 days. Although it's not a huge number of pages and they're really fast reads, it was just really fun. I had a really good time. I'm very glad that I chose these. It may be new me, but she still does not know how to breathe while talking to a camera. Let me tell you about this book. Let me remind myself what I said about this book in my notes app. Jesus Christ. I've just been out. I had to pop to Boots and get myself a coffee apparently, and I've got rained on and I'm very like, you know, when you've been walking really fast and I just feel like very high energy. So I'm filming this while I have that high energy. Okay, so book 1 was Jude outwitting the Fae. Book 2 was Jude being outwitted. Book 3 was her winning, basically. Spoilers. This was so good. This was really satisfying. I think I've mentioned it before that the sisterly relationships between her human twin Taryn, and her half Fae sister Vivi, I felt like those relationships weren't really fully fleshed out in the first 2 books, and kind of what we saw through Jude's eyes in the plot didn't really match up with how she proclaimed to feel about her sisters, whereas I thought those relationships were both developed a lot more in here. We kind of saw more of each of the sisters' like personalities a bit, so I was really satisfied with that. Other things in this book that I really liked, I have got to say, I really liked the amount of like military planning and strategy and politicking that was in this book. I like to kind of see that happening in a book, especially if it's like fairly political, but it doesn't get into the nitty-gritty of it. We just like see that it's happening. We learn what the big like maneuvers are, what the changes to the situation are, but I don't have to sit through like 10 pages of like intricate battle planning, because frankly I'm not going to remember it. I don't really care. So this had the perfect amount of that for me. Generally, I just thought this wrapped everything up from the first two books really well, as well as obviously expanding on them a bit. We had her relationship with her adoptive Fae war general father, and like how that kind of played out, her like weird familial relationship with her adoptive Fae family, as well as her sisters, which I've already mentioned. I think the kind of tie between, I don't know if tie is the right word, but the relationship between her experience in the Fae realm and her experience in the human realm, I don't know, I kind of liked how that played out as well. And of course, this is a Fae enemies to lovers trilogy, and I thought that wrapped up really well as well. I knew that I liked how that relationship went. I wouldn't have bothered rereading if I hadn't, because it's such a big plot line in the book. But I really like kind of how that developed. They weren't too easy to trust each other, which is like a flaw that I've seen in other enemies to lovers books. They were like proper enemies at the start, and it certainly wasn't like easy breezy at the very end of this, although it was put in like a satisfying enough place that you felt good about the relationship. I don't know why I'm trying to be non-spoilery, because I'm not really achieving that. And obviously with, like I say, this being the culmination of the trilogy, it managed to deliver some quite like emotionally impactful lines, which I really enjoyed. Generally, I really like Holly Black's writing style in these. I've not read any more of her work, I don't think, except maybe the Spiderwick Chronicles when I was really small. I definitely read those. But beyond that, I've not read anything else from her, and I think I'll have to give it a go, because I did like her writing in this. It, you know, gives like enough detail, enough world building, and enough like descriptive stuff without being overwhelming, in my opinion. And like I say, it did deliver some like really quite impactful emotional lines that were not like sappy. It was just in what was said and how it linked to other things that had been said in previous books. It like had quite a lot of impact, if that makes sense. This book was also really funny in places, which I really enjoyed. I think more so than the first two, maybe, perhaps. Yeah, the side characters in like the Court of Shadows, I liked how that all wrapped up, which I don't think is anything I've mentioned before, so if you've not read these books you will have no idea what I'm talking about, and for that I apologise. I'm clearly rambling, so I should probably shut up, but suffice to say, I loved this. I loved that this was my final read of the year. I had a really, really good time rereading these books. And yeah, I take back everything I've ever said about aging out of young adult fantasy, because this was excellent. I had a really good time. I think these are really good books, and I'm very pleased. It was a good note to end 2022 on, reading-wise. Additionally, I did not even know this, there's a new book coming. There's like a follow-on duology following the younger brother Oak, I think like 8 years in the future after these books. And the first one comes out on Tuesday, the 3rd of January, so of course I pre-ordered that the second I saw that it was a thing and that it was available. I genuinely had no idea that these books were coming. I clearly am really not keeping up with new releases, or nobody else cares. But I've pre-ordered that. I'll be reading that hopefully shortly after it arrives. I'm super excited. This was excellent timing on my part. But yeah, that's my reading year all wrapped up. So I think that is all I have to say for myself for this video, at least. Outside of my reading, there's really not much to say. It's been a very quiet like week and a bit for me. It was a very quiet New Year's for me. I spent New Year's Eve reading, cleaning my house to wake up to a clean house, and perfecting my enemies to lovers Spotify playlist, obviously. And then I went to bed early, because 2022 was not a good year, so I decided it could see itself out. Didn't really work. I got woken up by fireworks, but like the intention was there. Anyways, I am gonna leave that there. I'm gonna let you go. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed this video. Thanks for sticking with me throughout this video and throughout this year. and I will see you in the next one. Bye bye.